Join us for Pray Without Ceasing 2026 on August 15th in Buena Park, California, for a day of restoration, renewal, and reconnection with God. Stop running on empty. Experience the fullness Christ died to give you. Pray Without Ceasing 2026 because you weren't meant to just survive. Register now at praywithoutceasingministries.com. Today we're talking about honoring God with our leadership. You know, it's funny, as I was preparing for today, I had a very busy week. There was just family stuff. Easter just passed, and so I had commitments there. Things at work had gotten really busy. And so the time to record the pod had really kind of gotten away from me. And as I thought about, talking about how to honor God with our leadership, something that stood out to me was this. I think one way that we honor God with our leadership is putting His work, His things first, prioritizing the things that God has called for us to do. So I just wanted to share that. That's me being very, just very transparent and in the moment of there are things that God has called us to. There are things that God will call us to, and we have to prioritize those things, and He will help us to execute. I think that's the first way that we honor God. One scripture that I want us to look at, this is Colossians chapter 3, verse 23, which says, "Work willingly at whatever you do, as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people." Like, imagine that. Thinking about the job you have, or maybe even working at home. Some of you are maybe stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads. You may be leaders in your church. You may be leaders in your offices, in your communities. So thinking about that, whatever work it is that you do, can you imagine doing that work and thinking of God being right there, right beside you doing the work? Like, if you could see God looking right at you, would it change how you're working? Would it change how you treat your coworkers or your colleagues or neighbors or even your family that you live with? Would your posture change? I think it's interesting. Though I know God is with me always, right, and always watching over me, I run into procrastination. This verse to think about, okay, but you're doing your work as unto the Lord and not to men. Would it change my posture? And I think thinking about it that way, yeah, it does change my posture. Because here's the thing, even to say do your work as unto men, us as individuals, as human beings, would you do your work as if you were working unto yourself? You probably would slack off a little bit. Or you would think, maybe I could have a little lax time. But it's like when we're thinking about doing our work as unto God, we should bring God our best. Right? We should do it with excellence. It makes me think of the story of Cain and Abel. And so Cain and Abel were the first children in the Bible. They were Adam and Eve's sons. And this is in the book of Genesis, chapter 4. And I'm starting at verse 2 in the second sentence, which says, "Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. And the Lord respected Abel for his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. So the Lord said to Cain, 'Why are you angry? And why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it.'" So I love this because God is teaching from the beginning about bringing our first and our best to Him. So here's the thing we have to understand about this story. Remember how it says, if you do not do well, sin lies at your door. So the enemy will use whatever crack, whatever opening he can to get in and come after your leadership, to get in and tear down your character, your integrity. And so we can't overlook the story of Cain and Abel because Cain could have did something different. Yes, he was a tiller of the land, but he could have gotten an animal. He could have did something else to give God his first. It says that he gave the fruit. So it doesn't say that he brought the first fruits, right? It sounds like, and I'm just taking for what it says, he gave God something. And how often do we just give God something? Like, oh, okay, I got a few minutes in my day. Lord, I'm going to pray right quick. Or, oh, I got a few minutes in my day. I'm going to hop in the shower. Let me pray right now. Or I'm in the car, so let me pray right now. We have to be mindful not to be so busy and so overworked that we just give God whatever in our time. He's worth so much more than that. He is the one who has created everything that we see. He is the one who created the universe and the moon that we have people right now. Our astronauts are flying to go around the moon that God created. Like, that in itself is mind-boggling. So how can we think that God deserves our leftovers, our half-thought prayers, our half-thought Bible study? So it's like, how can we think that? But we do. Here's the thing. This is not a critique. I have done it. I promise you. That has been me. When I was leading, when I first started, I wasn't asking God how to handle stuff. I usually prayed like when I got in trouble, like when things got bad. And what I mean in trouble is like when work got hard and things became challenging. And I was like, God, what do I do? But I didn't start my day with God. I think I shared on this pod before. I remember being about 28 years old and I was an executive already. I was working 60 hours a week. And one day I had a headache for about maybe 2 weeks. And one day I got up to, walk into my bedroom and I collapsed. I literally passed out. And next thing you know, I woke up to paramedics in my apartment. And I'm like, how did you get here? And like, oh, ma'am, you collapsed, right? God doesn't want us to live our lives like that. He doesn't want us, whatever role he's put you in, he doesn't want you wearing yourself out. There's somebody, you are listening to me and you have headaches all the time. All the time you have headaches and you're not attuning to it. You're thinking, well, it's okay. This is a part of the job. That's not a part of the job. He doesn't want us wearing ourselves out till we have nothing left to give to him. Jesus' burden is light, but we put this heaviness on ourselves and then we don't have anything left for God. We don't have anything left for God, but then we want to honor him. And it becomes a really kind of murky situation that we get ourselves into. So I know I kind of ran off on a tangent there, but thinking about, we honor God by giving him the first of our time. We honor God by giving him the first of our energy and giving him the best and acting as though when we work, we're working for him. He is your leader. He is our director. He is our CEO. If we want to be successful, we have to look at it for truly what it is. That is what it is. But when we put God on the back burner and think that like, oh, I'll make time for God later, it's hard for us to think we're going to be successful. If anything, I'd say the first one is we honor God by giving him the first of what we have, the first of our time, the first of our work, and really focusing on doing our work as unto him. The next way that we honor God is by having integrity. I love this because so often in business, we have so many different decisions that we have to make. So it's estimated that on average, an adult makes more than 35,000 decisions per day. 35,000 decisions per day. Can you think of that? That is bananas, right? That's so many decisions, right? That's not just work. That's everything. That's what am I going to wear? And what am I going to do when I first wake up? Am I going to pick up the phone? Am I going to put it down? Am I going to open this app? Am I going to do something else? And so you think about that 35,000 decisions per day is the average number of decisions an adult makes. So when we think about integrity, there are opportunities that come up where we have to make a decision around, do we hold to our integrity or do we do something else, right? There have been situations where, and sometimes it's simple stuff, right? Like for me, I could be working with colleagues. let's talk about the meeting after the meeting. And y'all know the meeting, if you've been working anytime, you know about the meeting after the meeting, right? That's where you have some large staff meeting or some maybe a team meeting. And after the meeting, folks are gathering to talk about the meeting, right? And I've been in the meeting after the meeting and had colleagues, talking badly about our boss or gossiping about someone else. And I've been in situations where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to excuse myself. And I've gotten up and walked out. There have been situations where I've said, you know what? I'm not going to do that today. I think that person is doing their best and we have to have grace for them. And so there are opportunities where we can have integrity throughout our day. And so I think that's one way that we do honor God is by having integrity. We are God's children and we have to exhibit that to other people. I don't want to assume everybody knows what integrity is. You may, but let's just talk about it. So integrity is the quality of being honest, having strong moral principles and consistently adhering to them, even when no one else is watching, right? So even if nobody else is caring about gossiping about somebody or talking about somebody, it's like, how can we still be honest? How can we uphold our principles and our standards when nobody else is looking? There's always opportunities, I think, to be integral and to display God's love through our decision making. Psalms 119:1 says, "Joyful are people of integrity who follow the instructions of the Lord." I love that. Joyful are people of integrity who follow the instructions of the Lord. I love that. So think about that, in just the last 7 days, like, was there an opportunity where you exhibited integrity, where you could have done something else? You could have made a different decision. But was there a time when you exhibited integrity? Model integrity with our coworkers. I've been in situations. And it's like, okay, how can we encourage one another to be honest? How can we encourage one another to be forthright? And I think, in some of it's cultural, right? Like we talk about all these little white lies and these little lies, it's not a big deal, but it is. It is a big deal. And it's like, if we will be dishonest in the little things, how can we be trusted in the big things? And sometimes it's okay to say, you know what, I messed that up. I didn't follow through. I didn't get this done by the deadline. Or, I'm not going to make this deadline. I missed it. Or saying, I really don't have capacity to do this, instead of trying to press through or trying to cut corners to get something done. I've definitely been in a position of doing something at the last minute to get it done and still getting it done, like doing it with integrity, but knowing like there's a better way to do this. Like, how can I stop maybe procrastinating in some areas, right? And really focusing on, okay, let's pre-plan so that we can meet these deadlines, right? And it's not this stressful, kind of run to the finish line type of a thing. And that may not be your thing. You may be good with planning and staying on top of things, but I will tell you very honestly, the busier that my life has gotten over the past year, it has been a task to stay on top of everything and to get it done. But I think and ultimately we have to remember that we have responsibilities as leaders. And even when people are not watching, we can honor God with how we behave, without being honest, with showing love to others, and also helping others to make wise choices so that they can have their integrity as well. It's not just about us, right? It's the collective. Because when we have integrity, we're benefiting the organization. When we can be trusted, we're benefiting the organization. When we can be asked of our thoughts around spending and our thoughts around how we can curtail maybe waste, and we're being honest about it, then we continue to be an asset in our organizations, right? So I really think that having integrity is important. The other one I wanted to share was around discretion and discernment. Having discretion and discernment is how we can honor God in our leadership. Discernment really is kind of this inner knowing within yourself, being able to distinguish between basically having good judgment over something and understanding deeper what's happening, right? And sometimes discernment can be hard to articulate, but you'll hear people say stuff like, something about it is not sitting well with me. That discernment comes from the Holy Spirit. It's like something is a little bit off, right? I can't quite put my finger on it. I know you've heard people say, I can't quite put my finger on it, but I don't think I should be making this decision today, right? Or, I think we need to hold off on signing this contract today and giving it some time. That discernment is this deeper kind of knowing within yourself, and that comes from the Holy Spirit. It helps you to judge well. It helps you distinguish between what's right from what's almost right. You heard that? From what's right and what's almost right. Because sometimes things, it'll seem almost like, oh, I think but it's not quite fully. Like you're not quite settled with your decision. You're like, but on surface, that seems like the right decision, but something about it's still not quite right. And that's what that discernment is. And then discretion really is, I feel like discretion goes back to integrity, right? Discretion is, how do we uphold our unique privilege and position as leaders in holding things that don't need to be shared. As leaders, people tell us all kinds of stuff. You have your colleagues, your team members that talk to you about things that are happening in the office, things that are happening in their personal lives. And it's not for us to go and be blabbing and telling everybody's business, right? That is not what we should be doing, right? That is not having integrity. And not that we are supposed to be, like, I don't want to say it's like we're supposed to keep people's secrets, but we are supposed to keep people's confidences, right? As a manager, I would know so many things about my coworkers and like important things like health challenges and things happening in their families. It wasn't for me to share, but these things come up because as individuals are working, they're needing to confide in their supervisors because it's going to have some kind of impact on their job. And so you have to be a safe space and have to have the discretion to not tell everything that you know. It's not for you to talk about everything. You shouldn't be sitting in board meetings and then, a week later, somebody's hearing about what happened in a board meeting during lunch. You talking too much. That's good old fashioned. You're talking too much. That's the discretion part. Sometimes we are talking too much. And I know I see that at times where folks are just, they say you can't hold water. You can't hold water. And there are some people, I think when we think about integrity, you have to think about who you're around and who's in your space and who you speak to and how much that you talk about with those individuals. If you know that they don't have any type of discretion, if you know that they are known to talk a lot, to talk about people, to gossip, one, discernment should tell you, I can't trust this person. I need to be very maybe watchful and mindful of what I say. And then discretion is, don't say it. Just keep it to yourself. Everything that you know doesn't need to be shared. Because here's the thing, when we talk about showing love, I believe part of showing love is being a safe space for people. And what makes a good manager is somebody who people can confide in, and it's not going to go back to everybody in the office. I'm not talking about not having good boundaries and professional boundaries. Of course, we're going to have professional boundaries, but there are times when folks are going to come to you and they're having a hard time. Their spouse is ill. Their child is not doing well. And they're going to come to you because it's going to impact their work. It's going to impact their time at work. It's going to impact their capacity to get the work done. And they're going to tell you that in confidence, right? Or you have situations where you have colleagues that are not getting along and you may have to mediate that. You have to be able to keep the discretion of both people and have discernment around what to say and what not to say. Sometimes being in leadership, it can be isolating at times because you don't get to just have the casual conversations that maybe other staff members have. That's not the role that you're called to, right? You're called to a higher place. And because you're called to a higher place, you need to operate in the higher level, right? And we need to not be telling everybody's business and having poor boundaries and talking too much. So that's how I think we honor God. We honor God by being trustworthy people, people that others can depend on, people that others can see as a safe space. And the last thing I would say is we honor God by recognizing and acknowledging that apart from Him, we can do nothing. Apart from God, we can do nothing. That job that you're sitting in, you got that through God. You didn't get it no other way. He allowed you to be in that role, or he elevated you to be there. And so when we say things like, oh, I'm self-made, I did this on my own. What is it? Started from the bottom, now I'm here. Those different things that we say, it really sometimes can be dismissive. It can be dismissive to the power and the sovereignty of God to say that, oh, I've done this on my own and I got here by myself. And that simply is not true. That simply is not true. The more that we can honestly recognize that God is the one who is our provider. We talk about, oh, are you in the room? Are you at the table? Now the big thing is like, I don't want to be at the table. I want to build my own table. And that's fine. I think it's important to talk about inclusivity and access. Absolutely. And it's important to acknowledge that God is the one that gets past the barriers. God is the one that gets past the glass ceiling. He is the one that gives us access. He is the one that will have people talking about you and you're not even in the room. You're not even in a room, but they're talking about a project and your name comes up in favor of being someone that they should be working with. God is the one that does that. Jesus says in the book of John, yes, I am the vine. You are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. For apart from me, you can do nothing. So that's John 15:5. This is Jesus telling us apart from him, we can't do anything. So we have to acknowledge, I think, just be humble as we approach God. Be humble knowing that he is the one that has given us everything. From our possessions to our families, to our jobs, to our influence, to our access to certain things and certain peoples. He's the one that's got you in the room and at the table. And so the more and more that we can acknowledge him, the more and more that we honor him with our leadership, we're not just thinking of God as an afterthought, but we're really truly recognizing that I couldn't have nothing without God. And it's him that gives us the witty ideas. It's him that helps us to be successful. In my John Maxwell Bible, John Maxwell talks about talent is not enough, right? Talent is not enough. And he talks about David. And you remember, David as a young shepherd boy, he fought Goliath after he had already seen God be faithful with him in fighting a lion and fighting a bear. So he knew in those smaller situations, which I think fighting a bear and a lion is pretty big, but you know what I'm trying to say. In those other situations, God had helped him. Right. So he knew when he came to Goliath, he says, God is going to hand you over to me and I'm going to kill you. Right. That's what David says to him. And so David is able to conquer him not because he thought of his own strength as a shepherd and, oh, I fought a lion and a bear before, so I know I can do this. No, he said, God has been faithful to me in the past and God will deliver you into my hand. And I think when we talk about our leadership and we talk about our talents and our skills and our gifting, we have to know, no, you didn't get those analytical skills by yourself. No, you are not a whiz with coding and AI by yourself. You have these things because God has given that to you. God has created you with those skills. And we honor him by saying, you know what? I didn't get here by myself. It is by the grace of God that I'm in this position. It is by the grace of God that this random person maybe called you and said, hey, I heard about this, the skills that you have. We have this opportunity, or, we had this contract. We're going to give it to this other person. But somebody told us to reach out to you, right? Your name is being said in rooms that you're not even a part of. And that's because of God. It's not because of our personal influence. So I think that's the other way that we honor God, is to recognize that we can do nothing absent of him. We can do nothing without him. So as you reflect this week, I really want you to journal and think about ways that you're already honoring God with your leadership and ways that you can add to what you're already doing. So how is it that you're honoring God in your leadership? What does that look like for you? I think for me, in my current space that I'm at, I try to honor God by being authentic. I try to honor God by showing grace to people and showing love to people, even people that are hard to love at times, even people that are difficult to love. I try to pray for them. I try to show up my best, no matter what, position I'm in, no matter what condition I may be in regarding that person. I try to show up and do my best. I try to step in when help is needed just because, not to get any thank you, not to get any acknowledgement, but just knowing that help is needed. And the more that we can kind of step in without being asked to help somebody else, we're showing God's love to others. And then I think lastly is being accountable and being reliable. And sometimes I feel like getting too busy gets in the way of that at times. But it is my heart. It is my heart to be somebody that people can count on. When they ask me to do something, that I'll do it and get it done. I hope it helped you to think a little bit. And also to recognize that in some ways you're probably already honoring God. And that's good. That's good. It's good for us not to move throughout our day thinking that we're doing it on our own. I think there's a comfort in knowing that God is with us, because some days it's hard. But knowing that He's with us, for me, makes it all the more better. I'll catch y'all next time. This episode blessed you today. Please share it with a friend. Tag me on social at Audrey T. Shelby. I will see you back here again soon.